Me, everyone. Megan Barth is my guest this afternoon, the media equalizer. Megan, thanks for joining me today, and talk a little bit for starters about your project over there at mediaequalizer.com.
Well, mediaequalizer.com is a website which is a vehicle for information to expose media bias. And what we do is we expose not only media bias, but we also expose the monopoly that the media has with politics and big tech. And this trifecta of media, big tech, and Washington, D.C. really is something that we keep our eye on. We are the watchdogs, so to speak. Our for-profit Media Equality Project was started in order to really save Sean Hannity's career and fight back with our activist group called Stop the Scalpings on Facebook, in order to stop the conservative scalps from being taken by Media Matters for America and the left-wing media. And so we did save Sean Hannity's career. We also saved many sponsors for Laura Ingraham. We fight back against the censorship of the left because the goal of the left is to censor conservative speech and even criminalize conservative speech. And we see this coordination between the Democrat Party and the mainstream media and also big tech. For example, you have Google, which manipulated its algorithms to suppress conservative content. You have Facebook, which has entered the media, and it's also entering it with a bias, according to one of their executives, which, of course, the bias leans left. And so you have a news feed from Facebook, a search engine of Google, that provides left-leaning, biased journalism as quality journalism. And so we fight back against those smears and those efforts.
And you're doing a great job. I really urge people to take a look at this website. It's incredible.
Thank you.
And also the business of the tech smearing. I mean, I think it's now been proven not only by congressional testimony, but by the testimony of people like, Floyd Brown over at Western Media and other outlets. And Sarah Palin has mentioned this, that their Facebook social network, their presence on Google in terms of SRO, these things have been curtailed. And that you have here a small group of gatekeepers very much operating in the same way that the establishment used to operate the big newspapers like the New York Times or the big three networks, where you have Walter Cronkite sitting up there pompously saying, "That's the way it is." Every night we'd hear this. And we all thought that the internet was free and that it was more open. And I certainly thought that when I got into doing this show. But now I realize that, like any other conservative, I'm up against, this kind of informal censorship that is suppressing the free speech of anyone who doesn't genuflect to the left. So, I certainly congratulate you for what you're doing. And I think we need to get the word out. A recent story that I heard, and actually this also came out of congressional testimony, is that the Russian bots, these fake Russian accounts that are in the who knows how many, have done, and they're acting the same way that the old Soviet Union used to act, going all the way back to the days of Lenin. And that is that they're exacerbating problems in American society by pitting people against each other. The old dialectic. And they were doing this during some of these racial instances like Trayvon Martin and Ferguson. They're fanning the flames on both sides by putting out inflammatory information and getting people all riled up as a way to sort of trigger a breakdown in American society. And I just saw recently now that these bots are behind this whole family reunification business. They're aggravating both sides with these, loaded, outrageous fake news pieces to get people riled up. Now, is your research showing any of that?
We're not getting into Macedonian bot farmers. I mean, their influence has been relatively negligible. They didn't move the needle What is more outwardly dividing is the mainstream media and the Democrat Party.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We have to not place blame on these unidentifiable Macedonians that might be using Twitter as their tool, and maybe they'll grab a few kooks along the way. But what we do have to understand is that the Democrats own the media owns the narrative, and the narrative is everything. The mainstream media is nothing but a propaganda arm for the Democrat Party. I've always contended, as I studied under Andrew Breitbart for many years, that honest journalism is dead. And one of the reasons why I started my own personal blog is that I was seeing truth in the headlines. My personal blog is reaganbabe.com. And I've had that for a few years, and it's done very well. And I, too, have been suppressed from search engines, and I have noticed a drop in traffic. However, back to your original statement regarding the division in this country, no one fanned the flames further of division in this country when Barack Obama said the Harvard cops acted stupidly, that they addressed a black professor simply because he was black. When Barack Obama said Trayvon Martin, if he had a son, he would look like Trayvon. Mm-hmm. When you have Ferguson, you see a network of left-wing organizations and activists who are designed to create chaos because the left works in a medium of chaos. Chaos creates fear, and fear is easily controllable. And that's why the Democrats use these adjunct groups like Black Lives Matter, like Antifa, these George Soros seditious operations which are here to sow discord and division. And so let's take the border, for example, since that's in the latest news. Mm-hmm. Those detention facilities have been around for many, many years. They were never called Nazi concentration camps. In fact, in 2013 and 2014, well before Donald Trump came down that escalator, there was a surge in the border, so much so that a Democrat congressman from Texas by the name of Kewen, I think it's pronounced, Cuellen, went to the border to check on the children, the 1,000 children that were being detained. Now, did you hear about this in the mainstream media? Of course you didn't. Were they referred to concentration camps? And were they screaming about family separation? Of course they weren't. So the new narrative, even though these concentration camps have existed for many years, is now simply just used as a propaganda vehicle to smear Donald Trump because the Democrats have nothing left. All they have are insults. All they have is the politics of personal destruction, and their weapon choice is not only the media as a vehicle, but they're using fear as a driver in order to rally that agitative, dividing base. MoveOn.org, Black Lives Matter, all the George Soros operations are going to use this now as their new fight for the left.
Okay, my guest is Megan Barth. She's the co-chair of the Media Equality Project and a national spokeswoman for MediaEqualizer.com. Megan, you know, this whole business of smearing anybody that doesn't genuflect to the left as having something against black men and women or having something against some other group, it goes way back. I mean, I've been watching this forever. I mean, this goes back to Clinton's time, you know, and it's a tool that they use. But under President Trump, especially since he's been elected, it has reached such a shrill and hysterical level, and it's gone to such degrees that they're really, ripping apart the whole fabric of our society. And that's, the mainstream media, which claims to be objective, they usually don't go that far. And except now it's like an open war in which the whole aspect, this article of faith that Donald Trump has something against someone who's not white, or something against women, or something against gays, or someone against any group. It's almost like an article of faith for them. I mean, they, and I've, like this past weekend, I was with some very liberal people, and even the mention of Trump's name they look hurt. I mean, they're traumatized, and these are not witting people. They're just sort of swept into this movement. They're part of this emotional tenor. I mean, the witting people, the conscious people, know exactly what they're doing, but they are creating such division in this society, and it is so irresponsible. And the way they've reported this business of the family, being separated, it's so dishonest that I just hope that we can break through and make people wake up.
I always say that we've lost 30% of the population. Just write them off, okay? There's always going to be 30%, a minority of people that are going to choose to believe they're fed. They aren't going to have any intellectual curiosity. They're driven by emotion. They're driven by dependency. They would rather be spoon-fed than lead, or at least be intellectually honest, or at least a little bit curious or inquisitive. So write that off. However, when you look at the country as a whole, you look at how elections are won, you look at the middle of America, specifically the Rust Belt. This was a huge rejection of the Democrat policy and platform of Barack Obama, when you had much crossover. I mean, to ask your liberal friends, how do they explain how Donald Trump doubled the number of black votes from Mitt Romney? Mm-hmm. Ask your friends how many people, like in Pennsylvania, for example, switched over from Barack Obama, their vote in 2008 and 2012, to suddenly vote for Trump. Did those white people all of a sudden become racist? And so, you try to lay out some deductive reasoning, and it either will fall short or you'll red pill some of your friends, like I've done. And so when you look at the Democrat platform, for example, the reason that the Democrats have become this wildly unhinged is because they lost power. And it wasn't only the power in DC, it was power over the individual. When you look at the amount of numbers we're seeing right now, lowest unemployment in history, highest consumer confidence, lowest disability payments going out from the government, lowest entitlement payments going out from the government. What does this mean? This means that more and more people are breaking the chains of government, not having to go to the mailbox to get a government check. They're actually getting up in the morning and going to many jobs and whatever jobs they want. We've got more jobs right now and not enough people to fill them. And so this dependency that the Democrats rely on fuels the growth of government. A big government makes a happy Democrat. Okay? The more dependency, the more power. It is all a relationship, one of control and one of dependency. And so when the Democrats see that less and less people are dependent on government, they get louder, especially in their charges of racism. And so why do you think Democrats want open borders? Why do you think the Democrats want to have illegal aliens cross our borders illegally, enter our United States, illegal aliens who do not speak English, who do not have many skills, if any skills at all? It is because they will be dependent. And so they need to grow, they need to sustain the growth of government and grow government through illegal immigration. And that's why they're fighting for it. It is to get more people dependent on the government, because Donald Trump is getting more people less dependent on the government.
Right, they're clients, in other words. I mean, the Democratic base.
Serfs. Clients are, I would call them serfs.
Yeah, I would too. I think that's actually a more accurate term. And I mean, the Democratic left entity is made up of two parts. On the one side, you have the top 1% richest people in the country, in the world. With a few exceptions, they're all Democrats. They're all liberals. We could go over the list. The Forbes magazine publishes an annual top 100 richest Americans. You can just look at it and you can see that the vast majority, with a couple of exceptions, are Democrat liberals who support democratic and liberal causes and the Democratic Party. And then as you go down the list, you see a couple of non-Democrat names pop up. But the higher you go, the more liberal. And then, of course, there are their clients, the dependents, as you say, the people on welfare, the people coming over the border who automatically get on welfare. And yeah, I think you make the case. I mean, that's exactly what we're looking at here. And when they scream about people having something against black men and women, yeah, they're not really talking about the genuinely racist policies that they've advocated that have hurt the black community for half a century. What they've done to education, what they've done to the family with welfare, paying women to get rid of their husbands and then have more babies, or what they've done to the black church, or what they've done to black entrepreneurialism with their high taxes and their anti-business ideas. That's racism in the real sense, whether they mean well or not. And I don't think they do when you get to the higher levels. They're interested in creating a permanent underclass that can be dependent on them. So, when they scream about racism, I think that we need to counter that with some facts about who really are the racists. And, the biggest threat to them and what's making them absolutely go berserk is, as you say, Megan, I mean, the fact that since President Trump has been elected, his numbers in the minority community and in the black community particularly are going up, particularly among black men. There's a recent poll done showing 18% of them support Trump and would vote for him again. And there were whispers about that. I mean, you notice that, for example, Kanye West, right, comes out and supports Trump. And what is the response by the liberals? That he's insane. There's nothing mentally wrong with him. They take out, that's the other weapon they have besides racism. They take out their psychological hat and they put someone under a microscope and say, aha, this person is not, don't listen to this person. He's mentally ill. So, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's, these are hard.
It's an old Soviet tactic.
It is. Exactly.
That's exactly what they did to Dash D'Souza. That's what they started doing to Donald Trump. Remember, it wasn't Russian collusion. It wasn't obstruction of justice. Now all of a sudden he's mentally incompetent. Oh, we got to go back to Russian collusion. Oh, look, there's a porn star there. And so it was just, the shotgun method on what's going to stick. However, claiming someone that is mentally incompetent comes straight out of Stalin's Soviet Union.
Oh, clearly. And I think at this point, really all they seem to have is the porn star. I mean, the economy is booming. And I think they saved this business of the family division for Father's Day weekend, actually. Of course. Because President Trump has had a couple of very good weeks. I mean, meeting with the North Korean dictator, the tariffs. Now China has backed down on threats to putting in a tariff against American goods. The economy is booming. He's put the European leaders in their place. I mean, these are great accomplishments. And so they saved that one. I wonder what else they're saving. They've got a couple of bombs they're going to probably be dropping between now and the election because that's how they work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that this latest Father's Day charade that they created with the help of the media was really to distract from the IG report. The IG report is very damning. And it's lovely to watch and quite hysterical, actually, to watch the liberal, I call it the liberal linguistic Olympics, where they contort themselves into this crazed belief, I guess, that bias doesn't mean that you're going to act with, like, having bias does not influence your opinion. I mean, that's what they want us to believe. The IG found an enormous amount of bias, an enormous amount of animus, and yet you're going to have somebody like Richard Blumenthal tell us that the IG didn't find bias. No, actually, he found bias.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane. And it's like almost like a talk about mental disconnects. I mean, that's like a strange. It's like something out of Orwell. Right. What's real is not real. What's up is down. I mean, it's classic Orwellian dialectic from the left. And if anything, that report, among other things, shows the illegitimacy of the Mueller thing going on, which is really just a bunch of left-wing hacks who are trying to keep Trump off center. And the whole, Russia investigation, which is, if there was even any collusion with Russia, it was probably with Hillary. And in fact, the dossier shows that. and yet they continue to goose step along, and they're just marching to the beat. Do you think that Americans are going to start to wake up? Because I have a feeling that we're going to see on election day a big surge for Trump supporters, and they're terrified over that. I mean, they're trying to do everything they can to stop that.
Well, early on, some of the earlier elections, special elections this year, we kept hearing about this blue wave. The blue wave is going to take over this country. The blue wave is coming. Well, that was simply a narrative they wanted people to believe in order for us to become complacent at the midterms. And when you look historically at the midterms, the seated president, his party loses the midterms. But you look at the primary, for example, in California, and you would think that if there was a blue wave anywhere, it would be in California. I mean, that is the progressive socialist utopia. That is what the Democrats aspire to. High homelessness, high unemployment, and high taxes. That's the trifecta for the Democrats. So you would think, like, the blue wave, if it did exist, would be in California. Not at all. And what's interesting about California is they have a system there that the top two vote getters go to the final, right? They go to the general election.
Right.
Well, not really anywhere in the state did two Democrats win the top two. So we have Republicans seated in nearly every race up and down the coast in Central California. And the Democrats lost their supermajority in California. So there was no blue wave in California of all the places you would want to see it. So I think, again, this is just a canard in order for people to become complacent. But I think the people are already awake. I think if they weren't awake, Hillary Clinton would have been president. And
she was supposed to win. She actually did better than she would have otherwise done because of the barrage of hateful media against Trump and probably the same voter fraud that was enacted when Obama ran for a second term. And you had certain precincts with 98, 99, even 105% of the vote was for Obama. And that was recently taken away by a Supreme Court decision that's upholding the right of the state of Ohio to purge their voter lists from with names of people who hadn't voted for 10 years or something like that. And by the way, a little side fact here, Massachusetts, my home state, which is supposed to be so liberal, they have even stronger voter rules than that. So, I mean, that's something it's insane. But now their voting fraud machine, which they rely on when they have to, if there's a close one, that one is being called into play. And also their racist comments that somehow Black people can't identify themselves like anyone else is really a flat idea, one that was promoted by this William Brennan Institute, which was a George Soros turf group anyway. And I think that, it's almost amusing if it wasn't scary to think about what kind of garbage they're going to pull out of the hat next. But I think that this whole thing with the family reunification and the hysteria, I hadn't seen hysteria like it's probably like what the Salem witch trials was like. And with the Nazis and Buchenwald, you were hearing, SS troops and all of that stuff. I think that, as usual, I think they overplayed their hand. And it's becoming more and more apparent every day that they did so. And that this has been a policy, as you said, since 2014. Barack Obama put it in
2014.
Is that right? And Barack Obama, to his credit, put it in place because it was the humanitarian thing to do, because children were being brought over the border by these coyotes and put into possible, sex slavery or exploitation.
And they still are.
Yeah. So
that's what the Democrats don't want to talk about, and that's why I like to talk about it. The Democrats now are for open borders. Open borders is a magnet for human traffickers. Those 10,000 children that illegally crossed our border, that were unaccompanied, they're unaccompanied minors, were smuggled here. They were smuggled by either drug cartels, coyotes, ne'er-do-wells. It is a human trafficking operation. Open borders is a magnet and a necessity for human trafficking. There is a statistic out there, and I talk about this on my personal blog, reaganbabe.com, and you can follow the video. It's been viewed 24,000 times in just a couple days. 80% of women and children, young girls, that make their way north to our border are raped. Now, this statistic does not come from the Daily Caller or Fox News. It comes from Vox. It comes from Huffington Post.
Yeah, right, liberal sources.
It comes from liberal sources, and yet the liberals conveniently forget that fact. This whole entire racket, this human trafficking racket, goes hand in hand with the Democrats' open border policies. Children are raped. Children are sold into sex slavery. Children are sold into the drug cartels and used as drug mules. How many children didn't make it to the border? We have 10,000. How many were there along the way that got lost into these criminal enterprises?
And I mean, I even read that I don't know what these parents are thinking, but they're putting the daughters on birth control because they know they're going to be raped. I mean, how could parents be involved with this? I mean, to my way of thinking, I'm more angry at them than anybody to have their children being exposed like that. I mean, you know, and now it's come out that the judges who are looking at these cases of asylum, and by the way, if somebody wants asylum, there's a legitimate way to go about requesting it. You go to 9
different places through Mexico, which they should have gone to.
That's right. But judges, and these are not Trump-appointed judges either. These are judges who have been around for a while. They're finding that upwards of 90% of these cases are false, that these are not asylum cases. And I just heard here in Massachusetts on very liberal television program, Sue O'Connell, she had a guest on who was telling people how they can circumvent these new laws that are cutting down on asylum seekers. And they have a whole method of trying to do an end run around that and get people smuggled into this country. So, Megan, you're quite right. This is a smuggling operation. It's human trafficking. It's drug operation. It's MI6 gangs coming into the country and terrorizing Americans. It's not new. It's not under Trump. It's been going on for a long time.
How did these 7-year-olds get here unaccompanied? I'd like some progressive to tell me that. You think that they just walked across Mexico 3,000 miles unaccompanied? No. They were human trafficked. And how many children did not make it? How many children ended up in the sex trade? How many children are being sold to pedophiles? How many children are being abused, forced into labor? And where is Mexico?
That's right. That's right. And Mexico's busy keeping people from coming into their country from Guatemala. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is the way it's being reported is dishonest as usual. And as the left always does, going all the way back to the days of Lenin, they'll take an issue that is a legitimate issue, but they'll twist it into something that suits their political purposes. They don't give a damn about the children. They're interested in using this as a bludgeon against their enemies. And as far as Trump goes, they hate Trump because it's not because he has something against black men and women. They know that's crap. It has to do with the fact that he is presenting and standing up for a principle that is shocking in many ways, but is quite conventional if you think about it, and that is putting America first and standing up for the concept of national sovereignty as a progressive idea, as a democratic idea. And that is driving them absolutely nuts. They can't have that. And it's not just the Democrats either. It's these establishment Republicans, it's the internationalists, it's the world order types who want to create this, equal world where there are no borders and there's no, sovereignty, basically. And that's what is particularly aggravating them about Trump. He's waking people up. He has said that this is what he's about. He wants to return governing function to the people and take it away from these elites and their power. So, this is what we as American citizens are up against. And we owe President Trump a great debt. I mean, it's an amazing thing that he's done this. And I would even say to liberals that you need to recognize that, do you want to have control over, to a degree, over your own life and your own futures? I mean, really, that's what it comes down to.
Well, when you look at the amount of money that is spent specifically on illegal immigrants that have entered our country, I mean, under Barack Obama, I've always asked this question that a liberal can't seem to answer, honestly. How do you love something if you want to fundamentally transform it? We were promised by Barack Obama 4 days before he was elected that he was going to fundamentally transform this country. And he did so with two mechanisms. Obamacare, that's the first step, as Ronald Reagan warned us. The first step to socialism is to take over the healthcare system. They tried to do that with a $2 billion website that was glitchy. And then, of course, you do that mass migration. And what mass migration, unlimited open border immigration does is it overthrows the capitalist system. So the very root of progressive, they're so progressive. The very root of progressive policies is the understanding of Cloward pivot. And the left embraces Cloward pivot. Now, what is Cloward pivot? It is to overthrow the capitalist system. And how do you overthrow the capitalist system? You overthrow it by importing more takers than there are makers. You need more people in the wagon than pulling the wagon. And so when you see...
And then the whole thing implodes.
And the whole thing implodes upon itself. The weight of the underclass consumes the working class, if you will. Yeah. And that's what's really happened in California. And that it's going on in California on a daily basis. You see a mass exodus of California, of the takers, and an increase, or excuse me, of the makers, and an increase in the takers.
It's like a theme out of Ayn Rand's novel, Atlas Shrugged. And by the way, Megan, I really, I admire the fact that you had worked with Andrew Breitbart. I mean, to my way of thinking, a really great man who really kind of nailed this issue. He's like, in order for there to be democracy, in order for there to be freedom, we're going to have to take on what he called the media, the Democrat media complex. And that's what you're doing. You're continuing with that, and you're using a lot of good skills to do it. I would really urge people to check out this website, Media Equalizer. It's something you should look at every day, along with your Drudge Report and a couple of others and Breitbart. Except your thing, it's hysterical. I mean, it's really funny. You get into the real stuff that, I like this one, Pelosi botches Bible passage while stuttering to attack Trump. Pope Francis. I mean, it's like her face is half frozen. I mean, you get into like what's actually going on there and the sort of attacks that people are making. So I urge people to check this out. It's at mediaequalizer.com. Is there anything else, Megan, you'd like to mention for people's attention?
Yeah, I've got 4 stories and a half that I have to upload to the website because I'm the main editor there. So there'll be more stories coming. So just stay tuned. I'd also like to encourage people to go to our Facebook group. It's an activist network of about 112,000, conservative-leaning individuals who fight fire with fire. And that's Stop the Scalpings, STS on Facebook. And that is where we hold the media accountable. We make the left basically live up to the standards that they set for ourselves. We boycott the boycotters. We put pressure on Samantha Bee's sponsors, resulting in a loss of 2/3 of her sponsors. They're starting to come back, so we may launch another campaign. And so we use these tactics in order to, number one, preserve conservative speech on the airwaves, because if the left wants to destroy, they not only want to destroy the Second Amendment, they want to destroy the First Amendment in order to criminalize conservative thought and conservative speech. And so that's why we fight back.
Well, I congratulate you for doing it. You have a lot of guts to do it. Sometimes, you have to go into the Augean stables and clean them up, and it's not always fun. It's not always pretty. So, Megan, thanks again for joining me this afternoon.
Anytime. And as Andrew Breitbart said, walk towards the fire. I love to walk towards the fire.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.